Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our AIM2Learn webinar this morning. My name is Matt Minner. I'm with Catalyst Connection. And with us this morning on our webinar from the AIM Hire Consortium is Forrest Lee, actually standing in for Mandy Dwight at Rapid Robotics. So good morning, Forrest.
Thanks very much, Matt. It's great to be here. I'm excited to share some information about how automation can sort of maximize human impact for manufacturers.
Excellent. Well, here, we'll go ahead and run through we'll do a quick introduction for those who may be less familiar with AIM Hire. So what is the AIM Hire Consortium? It's a Department of Defense funded program through their Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation Department. This was formerly the Office of Economic Adjustment, or OEA, if you're familiar with that organization. They're all focused on the communities that form the backbone of the defense supply chain and supporting them. And so our program here at AIM Hire is focused on Southwest Pennsylvania and West Virginia, with the focus on the advanced manufacturing technologies and adoption thereof, helping our manufacturers. And we have a wide range of benefits to supply chain members that we work to deliver. You can see the wide range of connections that we provide through AIM Hire. These are all the partners that are involved with Catalyst as the lead organization, but we have a number of regional organizations in the economic development, from a technology development standpoint, and as well as our region's excellent universities. One of the main aspects that we've put together is trying to connect our defense supply chain in the region more thoroughly with those looking to source both the Defense Department itself and all the branches of the military, and also a lot of the prime and major defense contractors in the region. So this is free to join for manufacturers who are interested in engaging in the defense supply chain. So you visit our website, www.aimhireconsortium.org, and you can find a link to the database and register for free. And just a quick mention of some of the regional impact that AIM Hire has had. You can see the investments that manufacturers have made, over 16 million in new investments, 76 million in new and retained sales. And one of the ones that's most prevalent and most, I'd say we're most proud of is 370 jobs created and retained through the efforts of the consortium. And just a quick plug for our upcoming AIM2Learn sessions. Our next will be held in January. Our next date would be the 22nd. I see pretty close to the holidays, so we're just going to go ahead and focus into our first AIM2Learn session in January with a group called Netison, going to give a cybersecurity and CMMC update. And just as a reminder, all the AIM2Learn recordings are available on the AIM Hire website, so you can access them on demand whenever you'd like. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Forrest and let him take control and share with us the information they have to share from Rapid Robotics. So here, let me go ahead and there you go. Okay, you should have control now, Forrest. And just as Forrest is taking over here, I do want to, if there are any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and I'll be watching and be able to pose those to Forrest as it makes sense. So, and we'll definitely save some time for questions at the end. So look forward to hearing your questions and having more conversation around what Forrest has to present. So thanks again, Forrest. Go ahead.
Thanks very much, Matt. So as Matt said, my name is Forrest Lee. I am the Director of Brand here at Rapid Robotics. I'm actually stepping in, as you may be able to guess by looking at the title slide here, for Mandy, who is not feeling well today, and she's under doctor's orders not to talk. And so a webinar seemed contraindicated. I'm also joined on camera, as some of you may have noticed, by my dog, Barbara, who you can watch sleeping in the background, and occasionally by the cat, Ripley, who will be walking back and forth in front of me throughout the course of this presentation. So I hope you'll enjoy that. So we started Rapid Robotics back in 2019, right before the pandemic. And since then, we've deployed hundreds of robotic workers across dozens of customers. When we started Rapid, it was with the goal of deploying a robotic workforce that could mitigate or eliminate the challenges of manufacturing, the challenges that manufacturers face getting human workers. We know that manufacturers across North America, Pennsylvania, and everywhere else are constantly facing a challenge getting, especially human operators, human machine operators on the floor, and also retaining them. So we wanted to create a solution that was easier to get in place than a human worker. We feel like the obstacles that exist to traditional robotic automation make it impractical for a lot of manufacturers, especially given the pressure labor shortages are already putting on their business. It's really hard when you're at 50% staffing on a shift to spend 5 to 18 months getting new automation solutions in place. That is just too long of a timeline to really help deal with those labor issues in the short term. But more than that, we wanted to build a customer-centric approach to robotic automation. We wanted to deploy an accessible solution that not only helped our customers' businesses thrive and grow, but that helps their human workforce reach their full potential. So I want to talk a little bit about the labor shortage, just to set a baseline here. Labor shortage is endemic in manufacturing. Manufacturers have been facing labor challenges since well before the pandemic. And that's only going to get worse over the next few years. Machine operators are about to start retiring in droves. The average age is 48 years old. And that's going to accelerate this labor problem. It's already an existential issue for smaller companies. Right now, we have 865,000 unfilled machine operator roles across the country. And by 2030, that's going to be 4 million people that you just don't have to put in front of your machines. And our estimates show that that's going to cause about $1 trillion of lost revenue every year by 2030. I think that's like 3% of projected GDP. So this is a serious, serious issue. And recently, this year, we did a survey of manufacturing leaders across the country. And the main thing that we heard from them is if they can't fill those roles, they're not going to be able to meet their current growth targets. So this is something that's affecting them this year. It's a problem that they have right now. And it's not something they can wait months or years to fix. Because if you can't grow now, you're not going to be able to grow next year. So what can you do about it? First, you kind of need to start simple. You need to think about automation as a labor issue and as a process of incremental business transformation. We talk to manufacturers all the time and we hear over and over again about lights out automation. People want to do this big transformation of their whole facility and just do away with the labor challenges all at once. And that's great. It's great to have that plan, but it's not practical. It's not something that's going to help solve the challenges that you're facing right now. So we believe that the approach to automation should be thinking about how do you deal with these labor issues, and it should be a process, an incremental process. Start small and move quickly. And then you got to remember that robots are not as smart or dexterous as people. I think there's this narrative in the media that a lot of us buy into that robots are, we think of robots, we think of the Terminator, or we think of the Boston Dynamics robots doing backflips and running through obstacle courses. But the reality is that most robots are not as smart and not as manually dexterous as humans. So if a job is hard for a human, if it's too complex for human hands to do easily, then it's going to be really hard for a robot. One of our engineering leaders likes to say that if a human can do it blindfolded and with one hand behind their back, then it's great. It's a great task for a robot. Instead, what you want to do is you want to look for the simplest, repetitive, high volume task on your floor. Robotic automation is a great option for those. And for a lot of those tasks that are kind of low margin and where human labor is a big cost that's applied to those low margin tasks, robotic automation is a great option that can turn those high volume, low margin tasks into profit centers. But here's what I'm really here to talk about, and it's that robotic automation isn't just a solution for open roles. It's also a force multiplier for your existing human staff. And what that means is that by putting robotic automation in place, by automating that easy stuff, you can get the most out of those human assets. You can automate those really simple pick and place operations or pad printing or removing goods from injection molding machines to a robot, and you can move your humans onto those high dexterity, high margin, more complex tasks that require imagination, they require creativity, they require the human mind to do some problem solving. Maybe even more exciting, some studies show that cobots can reduce days lost to injury by up to 35%. Most common injury in manufacturing is repetitive stress injury because, we're asking those operators to do a lot of repetitive motions that often involve stressful positions. Doing this, pinching with your hands is stressful for you, human hand, and can cause an RSI very quickly. And so if you automate those tasks, you can reduce those days lost. And that is a huge kind of hidden piece of ROI to robotic automation. And then finally, automation, maybe counterintuitively, can help improve retention. We also have this narrative in the media that's existed since the earliest days of automation that, oh, robots or automated machines are taking human jobs. The reality is that when you put robotic automation in place, you're setting your business up to grow, but you're also able to put people into more challenging, more interesting roles that will keep them engaged in staying with your company. And so it can reduce that turnover. And that's huge if you're already at like a 40 or 50% turnover rate. If you have shifts that are only staffed to 50% or not staffed at all, reducing that turnover rate is a huge, huge thing. So then, in addition to automation being that force multiplier, it unlocks a ton of hidden ROI. When you have the right partner and you approach automation in the right way, then you unlock all this extra return on investment. It's more than a question of human cost versus robotic labor. Sorry, I sort of lost my place in my notes here. I apologize. So you're implementing a hybrid solution. You're not eliminating human labor entirely. You're implementing a solution that's going to future-proof your business because you're always going to need people to be in your facility. Some manufacturers might have success with that lights out solution, but a lot won't. So how do you continue to maximize human impact through the incremental addition of robotic automation? How do you continue to take your limited human staff and get the most value out of them by partnering them with effective robotic solutions? And you also got to think about that return on opportunity. Adding robotic automation to your workforce reduces your overall labor rate. Rapid robotics robots can operate, depending on the task, for as low as $4 an hour. So with a average labor rate dropped by that labor rate, what new business can you bid and win? And then finally, when you're considering robotic partners, you got to think about the cost of the entire solution. With Rapid, we provide a complete turnkey solution that includes everything, including service and support for the life of the deployment. So you got to think about when you're considering your partner, when you're considering solutions, it's the cost of the robot, it's the cost of the integration, programming, training, it's the cost of the end-of-arm tooling, and it's the cost of service and support, either hiring your own engineering staff or contracting with a third party to make sure your robots are fully supported. And importantly, you can't wait. Like I said up top, these are issues that manufacturers across the country are facing right now. They are existential issues and they're only going to get worse. And so we believe that moving quickly is vital. You've got to get robots in place as quickly as you can so that you can bring in new business. You can see that return on investment sooner rather than later, sometimes instantly if you pick the right solution. And so that you can reduce those injury rates, reduce turnover, maximize the value of your human staff, because that's going to position you to grow in the short term and over the long term to capture some of that lost revenue that we talked about up top. You should explore solutions like, oh, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I just said there's one question. I think it's a good time to ask it. You kind of talked about focusing on those quote low margin tasks, and it also goes around the incremental business you can get for those workers, maybe having them do something else more value added. But let's talk in the case of, say, a product manufacturer where those those low margin tasks, quote unquote, may just be one of many steps in their production process. How do you see them, or how do you recommend them placing a quote value on that production, on that task beyond just the labor costs? Or how do they quantify, okay, well, now they're able to do a different part of the task, but it's obviously not the fact that that product they're making sells for $50 a piece. It's just some sliver of that. But how do you, because it's obviously more than just the reallocated labor, there's some production value. But have you seen any successful ways to incorporate that?
So I'll put a caveat on my answer here, which is that I'm not a solutions engineer, and so I don't have the expertise that Mandy would have brought to answering some of these questions. But we especially specialize in secondary operations. So a lot of what we're helping our customers with are those sort of midstream tasks or building parts that are eventually going into finished goods. And so what we've found, I think, is that when you automate those little things, you're obviously going to improve efficiency across the process, right? By upping product quality. So a robot generally can produce goods at about a 15% higher quality approved rate than a human can, and it's going to have consistent outcomes and consistent cycle time, and usually a shorter cycle time than a human-only operation is going to have. And so even if you're in the middle of a process, operating one piece of that production process with a robot, that's going to be a really consistent cycle time. It's going to be bringing parts in or pushing parts out on a really predictable cadence. So that's one piece of it, is I think there's sort of knock-on efficiency that goes downstream in that process. The other part is that a robot can operate 24 hours a day, right? So depending on the overall process, you may find a ton of efficiency in having a robot operating 2 shifts when you're only running the full process for 1 shift and banking those parts or something like that. Does that answer the question, Matt?
Yeah, no, I think it certainly goes to talk to it, and and maybe if you want to pass that along to Mandy and the rest of the team, if they have any other thoughts they'd like to share, we can maybe share that through a blog post or something as well to follow up on it. So that sounds great.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also always reach out to us at info@Rapid Robotics. That will come directly to us, and we'll make sure that anyone who's on this webinar is able to reach out directly to us, and we'll give you a much more sophisticated answer to any question. I will make sure that engineers actually respond to some of these questions.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks for addressing that. I'll let you continue here.
Absolutely. So, the other part is here, and this is something that I think facilitates a lot of what I've talked about here, is exploring robotics as a service. Now, the traditional approach to automation is a capital approach. It's the same as buying any other equipment, where you can spend a few $100,000, take 5 to 18 months, and get that implementation in place. The challenge, especially with robotics, because of how highly specialized most robotic implementations is that that's not actually a feasible approach for a lot of manufacturers. That CapEx approach brings in something that's highly specialized. It's fixed in place. It requires specialist knowledge to maintain and to, more importantly, repurpose if needs change or a process is updated. Robotics as a service, on the other hand, from Rapid Robotics, deploys these flexible solutions, something that you can bring into that midstream operation of a larger process. And if your overall process changes, a robotics as a service provider is there to help you redeploy that robot if you need to. So that can be highly valuable as well in those larger processes. If you update, you move things around, it's much easier to remove an as-a-service solution than it is to redeploy a purchased solution. And then there's also speed of deployment, less risk with robotics as a service, and importantly, if you're already struggling with labor issues, robotics as a service are fully supported. So you don't have to have that additional maintenance staff, engineering staff, or programmers on board to help you maintain those robots and keep them operating at peak efficiency. And then the last thing is, remember, do it incrementally. If you have that midstream task that has a high injury rate, or just it's a drain on the margin of the overall finished good, think about automating that first, and then expanding your automation approach as you identify new tasks. And working with the right partner, you're going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to identify your first low-hanging fruit, prove that it works, and then expand to other tasks with very little risk and also in a highly efficient manner. So yeah, a little bit more about Rapid. We've deployed hundreds of robots to dozens of customers. We've never had a robot returned. Our customers are really happy with it. Our robots, our RMOs, have been operating almost consistently for more than 1,000 days. And we've produced millions and millions of parts. And we found that our flexible approach, our fast approach, really works for especially small and medium-sized businesses, contract manufacturers on a lot of those secondary operations. And with that, I think that's everything I had. So Matt, are there any other questions?
Yeah, was on mute there. Yes. Well, just a reminder to everyone on the line, if you do have any additional questions, please post them in the question window or the chat, and I'll watch that here as we finish our conversation. The next question we have here, Forrest, is around the robot as a service model. Mm-hmm. Do you see, because obviously it can make a lot of sense up front, especially from a de-risking standpoint, there's not, depending on the model, it's not as much of a commitment, and especially from a capital expenditure. But do you see ways that they can, or do you have a hybrid model where they can start that way, but once they're bought in, that they can then go ahead and buy in, have some like kind of a rent to own type scenario? Because obviously, cost-wise, it may not make sense for that to, when they see the value, to continue with the robot as a service model.
That's a really interesting question, Matt. So Rapid doesn't do the lease to own model for a couple reasons. First, frankly, we've found that projecting out over about a decade, even paying that monthly leasing cost is still cheaper than owning the hardware in aggregate, right? It just operates at a lower labor rate because of how expensive service and maintenance is. To contract with a third party or to hire in-house resources, that leasing cost generally is going to be less than the cost of ownership. The other part is that robots are not like a lot of other manufacturing equipment. A lot of other manufacturing equipment has a lifespan of decades. There was a study done a few years ago that showed that, on average, depending on industry, manufacturing equipment can last for 30 years. Now, a robot, a cobot especially, has an average lifespan of about 35,000 hours, which at 3 shifts, I think is 6.5 years. And so if you sign a 2-year lease, and then you want to purchase that equipment after 2 years, you're basically purchasing equipment that's only going to last you another 4 years, which doesn't make financial sense in a lot of cases. So generally speaking, I don't think you're going to see a lot of lease to own scenarios.
Okay. And let's see, one additional question that we've got. You mentioned I forget how the number, hundreds or 1,000 applications that you've implemented. What would you say the top 2 to 3 application types that you've seen and had the most success with?
Oh gosh, so there are a ton that are I think anyone who's looked at robotic automation, you always hear the term low-hanging fruit because that's what everyone wants to do because it's the fastest integration, it's the easiest to implement, and it's the same thing with us, right? And so we're looking for things like pad printing, removal of items from injection molding machines, sort of basic material handling. We do a lot of product inspection. Product inspection is a great option for automation because the quality of vision systems has improved a huge amount in the last few years, where if you're doing a visual inspection using a human operator, shifting to an automated system there is going to get you so much better results, because just the level of accuracy is so much higher with a robot and a vision system. So yeah, it's packaging, palletizing, box building, all of these really repetitive, frankly unimaginative, like dull tasks. Those are great for automation for robots.
Okay, very good. Let's see, let's just double check for any other questions. Okay, well, and not seeing any, we're coming to the end of our time here. So just want to thank you again for joining us, Forrest.
Cool. Thank you very much, Matt. Thanks to Catalyst Connection for having us today. And like I said, if you have any additional questions, please absolutely feel free to reach out directly to us at info@rapidrobotics.com. You can also scan this QR code to fill out a contact form, and we'll get back to you like within minutes. But yeah, if you have any questions, you want to reach out to us at that email, we will make sure that the right person gets back to you to answer them. Thanks very much for your time.
Very good. Well, thank you all for joining in today. And again, just remember, you can see recordings, and this one will be posted here in the next couple of days on our website, www.aimhigherconsortium.org, and just go to the AIM2Learn link that you'll find on the homepage. So thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great rest of the day.